Welcome to In the Spread. My name is Al Winchell with Blackfin Rods, and what I'm going to go over today is maintenance and care of your rods. Care and maintenance of the rod is very important, and what we're going to do today is just lightly wash and then dry it. Too many times people just want to rinse it and let them stay wet, and a lot of times you'll create water spots along the fiberglass part or the thread or the coating of the rod. So fresh water after a full day of fishing, just light fresh water, a little bit of soap. And what's also very important is after you soap the rods is to totally rinse and get the soapy film off. Also, by not doing that, you're going to leave this film on and will also create spots. You don't have to use a real high pressure hose. Just lightly rinsing with fresh water is sufficient. Same thing whether you have roller guides here or if we have the Fuji guides. Just lightly rinse and try and get water in all the cracks and crevices, especially where you have the metal. That's where you're going to have your corrosion. After the rod is rinsed, if you just let this sit in the sun now, you're going to create a lot of water spots. So that's why what happens is the moisture actually starts to get into the coating. You can use chamois, you can use towels. Just lightly dry them. And try and store them in a cool place, especially if you're storing it on the boat. You definitely want to do a little more maintenance than you would if you were in your home. And make sure that this gets rinsed very good here where the rollers are. The next step in the process to longevity and keeping your rod looking new, a little bit of furniture polish. We call it Pledge. Shake it up. The best application is to actually put it on the rag, because if you just splotch it on, it kind of gets too thick. And I typically do this after every second or third time that we're fishing. I don't do it every time, but what it does, it's actually going to put a repellent and a wax on the rod, and will also help prevent getting the water spots, and even around the metal it helps from corrosion. So by taking just a light thin coat of Pledge after the rod is fully and totally dry, every few trips you just come back and put a nice light coat of Pledge on, and what you're doing is you're creating, it's just like waxing your boat or waxing your car. You're just making a nice slick film on here that's going to repel water. You can do the same thing to the grip. You want to bring the color back. You want to get rid of some of the marks. You can even bring it down into the aluminum part of the butt. And it works both on roller guides and your regular Fuji guides. Now what happens over time, this rod has a graphite seat and a very hard plastic, what we call a slick butt. And over time you'll start getting marks and dings and stuff here. A little bit of Pledge really helps clean it up, bring back some color. And if you really want to make it that deep, rich black color again, WD-40. By putting that on, you can see how it really turns it black and brings that nice, rich color back. And same thing, whether you have the reel on there or not, but if you do take the reel off, try and get some down underneath the seat here where the actual hood and the screw part is actually moving. That'll help create longevity in that part. Doesn't hurt to put it on the grips here either. So by wiping these down, taking care of it, you're going to bring back the color and keep longevity and keep it looking new. Another thing that we really want to do and take care of, whether it's in your roller part or in your two-piece, meaning two-piece, this is what we call a uni-butt. It's a two-part butt. You're going to get a lot of corrosion even in here, even taking care of it. So, and don't mind the noise here, because what we're actually doing is we manufacture our own blanks here, and what you're hearing is some of the machines that are going on. So have a little patience here. What we like to use here is some type of marine grade corrosion, and especially on these aluminum two-piece and what we also call the three-piece store-butt, is you have multiple places that are going to grab and create the corrosion. Down here in the hood of the reel seat where the reel goes in, the top part, and then also on the threaded part here, which these are what's called the I'll think about it here in a minute. The locking mechanism, which this part locks down, and typically, because this never hardly ever moves unless you actually take your reel off. So what you want to do is just put a light coat of spray inside. And this especially when you buy the rod the first time brand new, make sure you get it up in the hood there and get it up underneath. And same thing on the foot on the reel. And by doing that, you're going to create and protect. You're going to put this little corrosion barrier on the rod. But too many times people will not clean them. And when you go to take them apart years later, they're locked up. And you don't want that because it's going to create a havoc. Sometimes you're never able to get these off even when we heat them up. And also by heating them, what you're going to do is the blank is down into what we call the ferrule here. So by not being able to remove this and you do bring it in to have service work done, you're going to end up burning the blank, or we're going to have to cut the ferrule and collet nut off. And it creates a lot of work and it's very expensive. But by taking care of it the first time, taking care of it right, you're going to create longevity where you're going to be passing this rod down for generations by taking care of it this way. Caring for roller guides and the bearings and the bushings, and also checking the ring guides on the part of the rod is very important also. The maintenance part is very simple. The roller guides, always check to make sure the roller is moving at all times. And there's two types of rollers. There's a bushing and also there's a ball bearing. These are the very common bushing. If for some reason it's creaking or making whining noises, or if it's locked up, because what happens is there's just a little bit of grease in there, and over time the salt and the dirt and grime can get in there and lock them up. Or if they're not properly cared for and rinsed, you'll start getting some corrosion on there. Typically you won't get rust unless it is really not taken care of, or if it's an inferior product. Don't be nervous about taking these apart. This is your roller. It's a bushing inside, and then it's two pieces. It's very simple. Take that apart, you can put it back, you can clean it, put just a hair, there's a little bit of grease in there, and you can make sure that the bushing or the ball bearing part is clean and free of dirt and grime. By making sure your rollers are rolling, you're not going to have line chafes, you're going to make your line last a lot longer, and also that, and most importantly, that large fish that you never want to lose, this will help prevent that. On the ring guides, the care and maintenance is basically the same thing, but you're not going to take this apart. A lot of people will say, I don't want ring guides because they worry about them breaking. Typically, the reason this guide will break is because it gets hit or bounced on the frame and will make it oblong, and that's a lot of times that's the reason the insert will pop out. You can take a little Q-tip. If you notice some little curly cues on your line, you don't know where it's coming from, typically it's going to be from the rod or from the guides on the rod. First place to check would be the tip. And the reason being, what do most people do when you have a swivel or a snap swivel? They reel it through your tip, they create a little nick here. You can take a little Q-tip or a little piece of cotton or a little rag like this, and you can turn it and you'll feel it getting hung up. And that's typically the first place to look, is you want to look at your tips. And they can be replaced, but typically this is where your problem is going to be. If it's not in your tip, using the Q-tip, run it down through all the guides and try and find where and which one is actually creating the curly cues or the abrasions on the rods. It's real simple, just taking care of it, maintaining, you're going to create longevity here and make them look nice.